David Camara. Yeah, I've been in sales now about 15 years. When he talks about my expertise as a nonprofit, nonprofits were my clients for the longest, right? In reality, I'm a sales expert. I'm a face-to-face expert in direct sales, and so I've been training people for the last 10 years. Here, I've did a door-to-door expert as well, event specialist. Trade show, tabling, things of that nature. That's really what I'm really an expert in. So, I've knocked on over 840,000 doors. I've spoken to over 700,000 people in a sales capacity. That's bigger than a lot of cities in America. I've sold in India. I went to India training people and teaching people how to sell in India. I was training in Australia. I was training in Malaysia. I'm a keynote speaker and a trainer and a national trainer for the organization that I was part of. So when it comes to dealing with face-to-face skills, that's what I believe I am an expert in. So once again, I always want to say I give guys a thank you, Doug, Travis, and John here for just giving me an opportunity to be in front of you guys. So today, actually, what I wanted to talk about was a lot of times in sales, when we're going to meet people and we're going to have conversations or meetings, one of the things that always comes up is that, I want to be able to how can I get them to maybe say yes? Obviously, I would assume that everybody here wants people to say yes to whatever they're doing, right? Correct?
Right.
Raise your hand if that's true, if you want them to say yes. Okay. So a lot of times is that we're thinking about what do we do while we're giving the information, while we're delivering what we're doing, is how can I do this to make you say yes? What we realize is that when you study some of the greatest salespeople of all time, what they all have in common is their ability to prepare the customer before they deliver the information. And so today what I'm going to do is talk about some techniques that you can do to prepare the customer before you actually start to deliver your pitch or actually start to deliver information. A great analogy that I use is that think about it like a farmer, right? The seed is your product, right? But a great farmer prepares the land before he plants the seed. Does that make sense? And so these are going to be techniques that you guys can use, that you can start to prepare the customer, prepare the soil before you're going to plant the seed, so therefore we can cultivate and grow some crops. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So one of the easiest things, the first thing I know most people will always understand is the law of reciprocity. We've all heard of the law of reciprocity, right? If you do something for me, I'll most likely do something for you, right? And so one of the easiest things is that thinking about whenever you're in a situation where you're about to deal with someone or you're going to have a meeting, think about what can you actually do for that person, right? So one of the first things, like giving them something. You can give people things actually physically, gifts or things like that nature. There was a study done actually in Colombia, and they were doing it with McDonald's, right? Which is thing about reciprocity, right? They said they had 50 people going into a restaurant, right? The first 50 people, as they came in, they gave every child who came in a balloon, right? And the next 50, they didn't, right? The group of people who had the 50 balloons spent 25% more. Why? Because they went somewhere thinking that they're supposed to go give you money and I have to spend with you, but you gave me something first. It sort of tells the mind like, wow, and then we naturally, when you give me something, I naturally feel like, you know what, I have to give you something back. And so in your perspective, in your profession, whatever you're doing, think about something maybe little. Sometimes it's not about how much it costs. It's just the fact that, wow, I was coming to you to get something, but now you gave me something. And so it sort of plants a seed to them to say, you know what, maybe I should do whatever I'm going to do with them, I'm going to do it back to repay them, right? The next thing is dealing with commonalities, right? Naturally, as people, what we have to do is that we like people who are like us, or like us as like literally, I like you, And so what your job is to prepare the customer, prepare who you're meeting with, is to make sure you create commonalities between you and them. So when we're talking about creating commonalities, what are some common things that we can talk about, right? Obviously some of the oldest things is, hey, where are you from? Where are you born, right? And then, oh wait, you're from New York? I'm from New York. I'm from Minnesota? I'm from Minnesota too. What you're doing, instantly creating those commonalities between people, and it strikes a chord because you know what? You say, this person is a lot more like me than I ever thought. And so in reality, a lot of times people are very simple and quick to try to see what's the differences between people. But great people at sales have the understanding that most people are not that dissimilar, and that we all are really connected. And so it's your ability to say, let me find the connections between me and you, and that's actually gonna be able to strike a chord between us. And so your ability to find these commonalities beforehand, right? Being able to be very good and exploratory in your questions will start to bring out some of these, open-ended questions, not yes or no questions. Right? Are you from here? No. Whereas we want to say, wait, where are you from? Now, get them to start to talk. And as they talk, in reality, just by probability, you'll probably be able to find some commonalities between us. The next thing we want to talk about is social proof, okay? Social proof, another term we use in sales, is sheep factor, okay? Naturally, as people...
No, what factor?
Sheep factor?
Like bad sheep?
Bad sheep, okay?
Just like that.
Yeah, bad sheep, right? Sheep follow the flock, right? So if a couple of sheep start going there, they're all gonna go there. Unfortunately, they say, a couple of sheep jump off the cliff. Unfortunately, they end up all jumping off the cliff. Okay, it's just that type of animal. But it's an animal used to recognize that as people, and we naturally have that natural ability to say we believe something is okay if somebody else did it as well, okay? And so what does that mean for you? So whenever you're presenting a product or whatever you're doing, your job is to make sure they know that, guess what? You're not the first idiot to try whatever I'm doing. No, what your job is to make sure they understand that many people have done this before you, and many people were successful, or many people got what they wanted out of it, or whatever your expectation of your product is, making sure they know that this product has worked before. And so make sure they know beforehand, right? Preparing them, It's so funny, you said you're from Tucson. Oh, I've been working in Tucson for like almost 24 years. I have almost 3,000 clients in Tucson. Now the person is, oh, okay, that's pretty good. That person really, it shows that there's social proof. There's a proof of concept that thing actually is working, right? The next thing we want to talk about is authority, right? So many times we forget that as you're presenting a product, as you're doing a service, that sometimes we forget ourselves that we are actually the authority. You're the expert. And your ability to make sure that they understand that you're the expert creates a dynamic that prepares you to say whatever you're going to say, whatever you're going to talk about is going to put you in the position where you're in a higher position and I'm in a lower position. Therefore, I'm more likely to listen, right? So no matter what, if I said that, if I put doctor in front of my name, all of a sudden, now, okay, when I talk about anything to do with health or anything like that, you're more likely to listen to what I'm going to say. If I never said I was a doctor, whatever I'm saying, people have the ability to say, I don't really know, right? I mean, even me, it's like, I'm just person, some of you might not have ever met me, right? But if you don't know some of my abilities, what I've done before, well, I have to make sure I tell you, these are the things that gave me credit. This makes me an expert at what I'm saying. Now that prepares the situation where now they say, okay, what he's saying, I think I can believe what he's going to say. And that's your job to do, preparing the customer, or we say preparing the soil, right? One of the next thing is to talk about scarcity, right? We all know scarcity is a real thing, right? Naturally, people, if you go back from time, right? Primal man has always recognized that scarcity is something that drives people. If they know, wait, there's not enough food, whenever I have food, I must have to hoard the food to make sure I have some later, right? Even to this day, even though we have unlimited everything, that's part of your brain is still existing. And so the understanding that scarcity, fear of loss, or fear of missing out, is something that you can do to prepare a customer. Make them know that, guess what? The prices of houses we don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is that everything usually goes up, right? And so obviously the best time to buy is now, right? Or interest rates. I don't know enough about this, but I'm just trying to remember some of the services that you guys provide. Interest rates. Nothing in life is static, but most things in life usually go up. And so therefore the best time is now. And so making them recognize, before they even get into my product, that is a true statement that sort of sets them up to what you're actually talking about. One of the things is called commitment or consistency bias that people have, which is that people naturally, if you get someone to commit to something, regardless of how small, they're more likely to do that, obviously, right? Or if consistency bias, where you do something and you remind somebody of their consistency, they're more likely to keep that consistency. I'll give you an example. So there was a guy, he's running a restaurant, right? It was a famous restaurant in Chicago. And one of the things was that they were having people who actually coming to the store, coming for lunch, would cancel a lot, right? So people were canceling all the time. So he's like, okay, how can we get more people to actually stick to their reservations, right? So he hired a company, and they came in and they said, guess what? They're like, what is your receptionist saying to the people? So before she got off the phone, whatever she would say, hey, do you think you can just please call if you're going to cancel, if you have to change your reservation? You think you could please do that? And people were like, okay, cool. And people, can you make sure you please call? And she'd hang up. And they said, that's the problem right there, right? They're like, guess what? They said, all we need you to do is just say, when you say that conversation, and say, do you think you can please call us? And pause. And people would have to answer. And people would say, yes, right? And they said that their reservations stuck out, or at least people would call and change a reservation, went up by 55%, right? Why is that? It's a very simple thing. It's because when you actually get people to vocalize and get a commitment from them, they're more likely to do it. So it's like, okay, I'll make sure I'll see you at 10, okay, right? No, you can say, I'm gonna see you at 10, right? And you get that person to say yes. Yes, great. What you're doing is preparing them. Many times you've heard John and Don talking about creating commitments before you have that first meeting, right? Telling them, okay, I hope you know that this is what this meeting is going to be about, correct? Getting them to say yes, getting that commitment before you get into your information is what you're doing, is preparing the customer, preparing the soil. And then last but not least, one of the things we could do is creating the unity. Okay, unity, or we call it unity, or the we bias, which is, if we're part of the team, same team, I'm more likely to listen and do what we want to do, right? I like to use analogies and studies that go on, okay? One of the things is that I used to do a lot of events for charities, right? Fundraising, right? One of my businesses here, I raised over $15 million for my charity partners here in Tucson, okay? And one of the abilities is, like, when you're teaching people, most people, if you just have people standing around asking for money, most people are like, right? One of the greatest things that we always do was say, you create the unity or the we bias. So we're together. So if you just ask somebody to say, hey, we're raising money for ASPCA, right? Someone like, okay, cool, right? You might have a certain amount. But if you say, hey, you know what? Let's say you're in U of A. You say, hey, I'm a U of A student, all right? I'm a U of A student, and we're raising money for ASPCA, and we're asking people to help. That person is more likely to help. Why? Because I go to the U of A, right? So what you're doing is creating a unity bias. So we naturally say, oh, okay, you know what? We're part of the same team, so you're more likely doing something right, or I'm more likely to want to help you, right? You have a question?
I don't understand the difference between that and commonality.
So commonality is just where you're from, or I just like you. We just have something in common, but unity is more we're on the same team. So meaning I go to the same university. You create, like, saying, oh, I've worked in the same department for years. It's more about based on we're on the same team more as maybe we're just alike. I would say. Can you see the difference between that or no? No? Okay, well, I guess maybe the way I'm explaining it, but I think I would say that if I just like, we're alike and we're on the same team. Like you sell, what do you do for work?
I'm retirement income planner,
Okay, so would that be in finance?
yes.
Okay, so you're a retirement. So the difference is like, what's the name of your company?
Booth Financial Services,
Okay, so Booth Financial. So the difference between the unity bias or team bias versus commonality would be like something in common is we're in finance, right? That's it. Okay, oh, we're in finance. That's something in common. But the unity bias or team bias is that we both work for Booth. So meaning now, because we're on the same team, literally, you're more likely to do or prepare me in that way. We're in the same company. Does that make sense? There's a difference. Right. There's a difference between, oh, we're literally on the same team, or that's just something that's similar between us, okay? Okay, I can see a black person, we're both black, okay? That's true, that's a commonality. But the difference is I'm from New York, or I come from your school. We both went to Temple. There's a difference between just being a black person and saying I went to the same school as you. Do you see the difference? Or no? Okay, well, huh? Yes, exactly, right, yeah. And that's our ability. The difference is the ability to recognize that and why that means something more to someone else. Yeah.
I think with the commonality, that's to create more of a comfort.
Correct.
Where
Right.
unity is to build your team. Like we're gonna work as a team where, we're from New York.
Right. We're from New York. Oh, that's cool. That creates a rapport and maybe makes things a little bit easier.
More comfortable.
Yeah, when you're doing a unity or the team bias, it's really like I especially if you want something truly, I'm more likely to help you because we're actually on the same team. And so these are some things that you can do that just help you prepare your customer, where you're going, and who you're dealing with. All right?